The plexiglass shatters inward. Tracer rounds punch through the curved nose like needles through skin. Inside, Oberleutnant Hans Keller feels warm blood spray across his face, not his own. The navigator beside him slumps forward, still clutching the bomb sight. Through the spider-webbed glass, Keller watches the Spitfire pull up and away, already banking for another pass. September 15th, 1940. Over Kent. He can see everything. That's the problem. The Heinkel, he 111's revolutionary. Greenhouse nose floor to ceiling glass, wrapped around the forward fuselage, gives him a panoramic view of the English countryside below. The scattered cumulus clouds above, and the 8-gun Hurricane now diving straight at his face. Every rivet, every panel line. The pilot's leather helmet. The design was supposed to be brilliant. Keller drops his seat to the lower position, grabbing the control yoke with both hands. The bomber shudders as cannon rounds walk up the starboard wing. His radio operator is screaming something about engine temperature. The dorsal gunner behind him fires 3-second bursts from his single 7.92 mm machine gun, a garden hose. Against a Hurricane. But here's what the Luftwaffe planners didn't account for in 1938 when they redesigned this aircraft. RAF Fighter Command learned to attack from the front, head-on, where the glass is thinnest, where most of the 5-man crew sits shoulder to shoulder, where a single burst can kill 3 men and cripple the aircraft in 2.4 seconds. The ventral gunner lying prone in the belly gondola they call the Sterbebett. The deathbed can't even traverse his gun forward enough to engage. He watches helplessly as another Spitfire approaches from 12 o'clock level, its 8 Browning machine guns already flickering orange. Keller counts for other Heinkels in his formation. Whir! To our already trailing smoke, descending in slow spirals toward the patchwork fields below. The tight defensive box they formed over Calais 90 minutes ago has disintegrated into individual bombers, fighting for survival. Each pilot wrestling with the same terrifying mathematics. Their top speed is 270 miles per hour at altitude, maybe 230 loaded with bombs. Desfiram 340. To that! Through his spectacular glass, Observatory 67. Separate panels of plexiglass and flat glazing held together by aluminum framing. Keller watches the Hurricane's gun ports light up. The peculiar design that was supposed to give them bombing precision and crew coordination has become a crystal coffin at 16,000 feet. His bombardier managed to toggle the bombs away 3 minutes ago, somewhere over southeast England. God knows what they hit. The mission was London docks. They were probably still over Sussex when the toggles went. The Hurricane's shells arrive. Glass everywhere. The sound of metal tearing. Someone screaming. The smell of hydraulic fluid and cordite and something else burning insulation. Melting plexiglass. Blood. And through it all, Keller can still see everything. Every single detail. That's the flaw they never fixed. Stay with this story. February 24th, 1935. Rostock Marine Airfield, Germany. Chief Test Pilot Gerhard Nitschke ignores his orders and lands the first. He 111 prototype at the company factory instead of the distant Reckland test facility. The sleek, twin-engine aircraft touches down smoothly on the short runway proof. Nitschke insists of its forgiving handling characteristics. Ernst Heinkel watches from the hangar. He sees a commercial airliner. The German Air Ministry sees something else entirely, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The Treaty of Versailles explicitly forbids Germany from building bomber aircraft. So, Heinkel's engineers brothers Siegfried and Walter Blitzmailplane 10 Jeets. Baggage compartment in the nose. Top speed exceeding 250 miles per hour, making it the fastest airliner in the world. Deutsche Lufthansa orders 5. The Luftwaffe orders 300. By late 1936, The He-111B enters service with the nascent bomber force. Initially, it carries only 3 7.9 mm machine guns, one in the nose, one dorsal, one in a retractable ventral dustbin position. The defensive armament seems almost an afterthought because the tactical doctrine is clear: speed equals survival. Contemporary fighters can barely catch it. Then comes Spain. March 9, 1937, 30 He-111s of the Condor Legion attack Republican airfields near Guadalajara. The bombers outrun the Soviet-supplied Polikarpov I-15 and I-16 fighters with ease. Over 3 years of civil war, only 21 Heinkels are lost to enemy action. The Luftwaffe staff concludes their bomber philosophy is sound. They're catastrophically wrong. The problem isn't visible yet because the enemy fighters are obsolete. The He-111B's conventional stepped cockpit separate. Windscreens for pilot and co-pilot provides adequate visibility and reasonable protection. But pilots complain. They want better downward vision for bombing runs, better forward visibility during takeoffs and landings. So, in late 1938, Heinkel introduces the P variant. The transformation is radical. The entire nose becomes a smooth, bullet-shaped, greenhouse, continuous, glazed section from the pilot's seat to the bombardier's prone position in the nose tip. The design eliminates the separate windscreens entirely. Pilots now look through the same curved plexiglass panels as the bombardier and navigator. From an engineering perspective, revolutionary. Visibility improves dramatically. The bombardier has an unobstructed view for the Lotfi 7D bomb sight. The pilot can elevate his seat, poking his head through a small overhead hatch for ground operations. The navigator can move freely between positions. But here's the fatal compromise. The design concentrates most of the 5-man crew pilot. Copilot navigateur. Bombardier Fleisching. Forward compartment enclosed entirely by glass. By August 1940, 463 He-111s sit on French airfields, preparing for the assault on Britain. The X variant mechanically identical to the P, but using Junkers Jumo 211 engines. Scarce Deutsche Bahn 601 Sekunde Kampf der Force. 15 Kampfgruppen an der Luftflotten 2 und 3. They're about to discover what happens when innovation becomes vulnerability. When the future becomes a target. Heinkel's design bureau, Marianne A. Winter 1937. Siegfried Gunter studies the wooden mock-up of the new nose section, running his hand along the smooth curve where 67 individual glass panels will eventually fit. The assistant beside him holds technical drawings showing each panel's dimensions, curvature specifications, and mounting points. The challenge is geometrically brutal. Traditional aircraft windscreens use flat or gently curved glass simple to manufacture. Easy to replace. Structurally straightforward. Gunter wants something unprecedented. A compound curved, seamless glazing system that wraps around the entire forward fuselage. Each panel must be optically clear for bombing precision while maintaining structural integrity at 270 miles per hour. The factory at Oranienburg receives the first production order in March 1938. Workers quickly discover the manufacturing nightmare. The plexiglass panels arrive from suppliers with tolerances measured in millimeters. But when installed, thermal expansion at altitude causes gaps. The aluminum framing that holds everything together creates hundreds of potential stress points. Each joint must be sealed against the -40-degree temperatures at 20,000 feet, while remaining flexible enough to handle the airframe's vibration. Test pilot Eric Warsitz flies the first P-Series, prototype. His report notes excellent visibility and improved crew coordination. The bomber can now operate with unprecedented efficiency. The pilot maintains formation while the bombardier has an unobstructed view from the prone position. The navigator can move forward to assist with targeting or aft-to-handle radio duties. But Warsitz also mentions something odd. In his detailed test notes, He describes optical distortions in certain lighting conditions. The curved panels, while providing superior visibility, aren't optically flat. Reflections bounce between surfaces. In bright sunlight, the greenhouse effect turns the cockpit into an oven. Condensation forms on interior surfaces during rapid altitude changes. The engineers make adjustments. They add a small overhead hatch. The pilot can raise his seat and stick his head out for ground operations. Like a tank commander, they install better ventilation systems. They experiment with different plexiglass formulations to reduce distortion. What they don't address is the fundamental vulnerability: armor protection. Early designs include 8mm steel plates behind the pilot's seat and beneath the cockpit floor. But the glass, itself ranging from 6mm to 10mm thick depending on the panel, offers virtually no ballistic protection. A 7.7mm round fired from a Browning machine gun at 300 yards will punch through the thinner sections like paper. The Luftwaffe's position is clear. Speed negates the need for heavy armor. By December 1938, production begins in earnest. Heinkel builds the P-Series at Rostock. Junkers builds 40 at Dessau under license. Monthly output reaches 50 aircraft. The demand from Kampfgeschwader units is insatiable. Test results from Recklen facility show the bomber performs exactly as designed. Excellent bombing accuracy, good crew coordination, adequate speed, acceptable range. Nobody tests it against concentrated frontal fighter attacks. That experiment will happen over England. In combat, where the failures aren't theoretical, where the glass doesn't just crack, it shatters. May 10, 1940, over France. Hauptmann Werner Borner leads. His Staffel of 9, he won 11Hs across the Belgian border at 12,000 feet. The target, French railway yards near Sedan. The opposition, Moran-Saulnier MS-406 fighters underpowered, underarmed, overwhelmed. The Heinkels bomb with impunity. Borner watches through his panoramic nose as the bombs tumble away, marching across the rail junction in perfect intervals. Secondary explosions blossom orange against the grey morning. Not a single French fighter reaches them. The defensive box formation holds tight all the way back to the German lines. Mission successful. Losses 0. This is how it's supposed to work. But then comes August. Flight Lieutenant James Sailor Malin, 74th Squadron RAF, circles above Manston at 18,000 feet. His Spitfire is one of 6 providing top cover for the airfield. The radio crackles. Bandits, Angels 1-6, heading 340. He rolls inverted and pulls through. There are formation of Heinkels in close defensive box. Black crosses stark against winter camouflage. They're heading for the radar station at Forness. Malin counts 16 bombers, with perhaps a dozen Bf-109 escorts weaving above them. The tactical doctrine is still evolving. Standard RAF fighting area, attacks developed in the 1930s against slow, poorly defended bombers call for systematic, textbook approaches from the rear. Malin has a different idea, learned from the Germans themselves during the last month of fighting. Head on. He points his Spitfire's nose directly at the lead Heinkel and opens throttle. His wingman follows. The convergence rate is over 600 miles per hour, too fast for the bomber's nose gunner, too track, too fast for effective defensive fire. From the Heinkel pilot's perspective, terrifying. Oberfeldwebel Klaus Schmidt sees the Spitfire growing larger through his glass nose, centered perfectly in his field of view. The bombardier beside him swings the single MG-15 machine gun, but the vibration makes aim impossible. The closure rate defies human reaction time. Malin opens fire at 400 yards. 8 Browning machine guns firing 160 rounds per second combined converge on the Heinkel's glass nose. The flat panels at the front shatter first, then the curved sections, then everything. Schmidt feels the impacts as physical blows. The bombardier's head snaps back. The navigator screams. Hydraulic lines rupture, spraying red fluid that looks disturbingly like blood. The left engine starts smoking. Malin brakes right, passing less than 50 feet above the bomber. He glances back as he climbs away, checking his tail for the 109s. The Heinkel is already nose down, streaming smoke from both engines. Two other Spitfires are pressing attacks on the formation's flanks. The defensive box disintegrates. Schmidt manages to belly land in a Kent wheat field 20 minutes later. Of his 5-man crew, 3 are wounded. 1 is dead killed in those first 2 seconds when Malin's rounds punched through the glass. The after-action report reaches Luftwaffe headquarters 3 days later. Nobody's sure what to make of it yet. But the RAF has learned something at attack from the front, where the glass is. Luftwaffe High Command, Karin Hall, August 16, 1940. Reichsmarschall Hermann Gring studies the loss reports from yesterday's attacks. 72, He-111s launched from Norway against bomber command bases in Yorkshire a surprise. Assault on England's northeast, where fighter command presence was supposedly minimal. Supposedly. The bombers encountered 7 full squadrons of Hurricanes and Spitfires. 8 Heinkels didn't return. For more, crash-landed with dead or wounded crew. The defensive armament now, increased to 5 machine guns per aircraft, proved inadequate against determined frontal attacks. Gring scrawls notes in the margins: increase escort fighters, tighter formations, higher altitude. None of these address the fundamental problem. Meanwhile, at RAF Bentley Priory, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding examines his own intelligence reports. The He-111's vulnerabilities are becoming clear through accumulated combat data. Fighter Command circulates new tactical guidance to all groups. The enemy bomber's nose presents minimal defensive fire capability. Frontal quarter attacks, from slightly above yield, best results against concentrated crew positions. The arms race accelerates. Lachie, August Heinkel frantically modifies the H4 and H5 variants. Engineers at a 20mm MGF F cannon in the forward gondola position, finally giving the bombardier something heavier than a rifle-caliber machine gun. Additional armor plates go behind crew positions. Some aircraft receive twin-barrel MG8 1Z machine guns replacing the single MG15s. But you can't armor glass. Production figures tell the story. In August alone, Heinkel builds 96 new He-111Hs at Oranienburg. Dornier produce 6-7s, de 100 de 88 da Luftwaffe members attrition over. Britain is exceeding all pre-war estimates. Intelligence Officer Major Beppo Schmidt at Luftflotte to headquarters compiles the brutal statistics. Week of August 12th to 18th, 27 He-111s destroyed, 14 damaged beyond repair. Week of August 19th to 25th, 34 destroyed, 19 damaged. Week of August 26 September 1st, 41 destroyed, 23 damaged. 60% of losses are attributed to frontal fighter attacks. The Kampfgeschwader commanders request immediate modifications, additional nose armor, heavier forward-firing armament, improved glass ballistic resistance. Heinkel's engineering response is delivered September 3rd. Nose armor installation would require complete redesign. Minimum 12 months development. Weight penalty would reduce bomb load by 800 kilograms. Ballistic-resistant glass does not exist in required dimensions. So, instead, the Luftwaffe adjusts tactics. Bomber formations now include dedicated fighter sweeps ahead of the main force. Escort ratios increase from 1 fighter per 3 bombers to 1-to-1. Attack altitudes rise to 20,000 feet, where the thinner air reduces RAF fighter performance marginally. None of it matters. September 15th, the day later designated Battle of Britain Day, sees the largest daylight assault yet. Over 200 bombers escorted by 700 fighters. Fighter Command throws everything into the air. 23 squadrons 276 fighters. The Heinkels fly their missions in the greenhouse coffins. By day's end, 56 German aircraft destroyed. The He-111s account for 23 of them. At Luftwaffe headquarters, the tactical staff begins planning the shift to night operations. The glass nose that made precision daylight bombing possible will soon be flying only in darkness, where visibility doesn't matter, where RAF night fighters can't see them, where the Flaw becomes irrelevant to almost. September 7th, 1940, 16:45 hours. 17,000 feet over the Thames estuary. Feldwebel Ernst Richter tightens his oxygen mask and checks the formation. 11 leaves of 3 kg 53 stepped after 3. Digitalen dogs. The weather, perfect. Too perfect. Through the glass nose, he can see everything. The serpentine Thames reflecting afternoon sunlight. The sprawl of London ahead, grey and brown and smoking from yesterday's raids. The railroad lines converging on the city like spokes on a wheel. His bombardier. Unteroffizier Hans Pohl ihnen Lof is 7 bombsite. The navigator, Gefreiter Werner Koch, Krusch besidri Ster turn course. Behind them, the radio operator and gunners man their stations. 5 men, all forward of the bomb bay. All surrounded by glass. Fighters. The dorsal gunner's voice cracks on the intercom. 10 o'clock high. Richter's eyes snap left. They're diving out of the Sun 6 Hurricanes in line astern. No, 8. The lead aircraft rolls wings level at 1,000 yards out, nose pointed directly at them. Idiot commies. Pohl abandons the bomb site, grabbing the single MG-15 mounted in the nose cone. He swings it toward the approaching hurricane, squinting against the glare. The gun's traverse is limited maybe 30 degrees laterally, 15 degrees down. The fighter is already outside that cone and closing at 600 feet per second. Closer, Richter Mutters, wait. The hurricane opens fire at 500 yards. Tracers arc toward them, seeming to float lazily through the air before accelerating to bullet speed in the last 100 yards. Richter hears the impacts before he sees them, a rapid drumming like hail on a tin roof. The flat glass panels in the nose star and crack, then shatter. Wind roars through the cockpit at 230 miles per hour. The noise is deafening, a shrieking that drowns out the engines, the guns, everything. Pohl slumps sideways, the MG-15 swinging free on its mount. Blood sprays across the intact side panels. Coke screams. The hurricane flashes overhead, so close Richter can see the pilot's head turning to watch his handiwork. A second fighter is already boring in from 11 o'clock, guns twinkling. More impacts these, walking up the left engine cowling. Oil pressure drops. RPM spikes, then falls. Richter hauls back on the yoke, trying to climb above the attack. The bomber mushes upward, bleeding airspeed. At 130 knots, the left wing drops. Stall warning. He pushes forward, looks left through the shattered nose. The formation is scattering, each bomber fighting its own battle, to Heinkel's trail smoke. A third spins earthward, one wing missing. The bomb aimer's position is a horror show. Pohl is definitely dead. Richter can see the entry wound in his back where a .303 round punched through after shattering the glass. Koch is clutching his arm, blood welling between his fingers. The floor is slick with hydraulic fluid and blood and broken glass. Still 30 miles from the target. Richter keys the intercom, jettison bombs. Emergency course, back to France. Through the destroyed nose now, just twisted aluminum framing and jagged glass shards. Whipping in the 200 mile per hour slipstream, he can see 3 more hurricanes forming up for their attack runs. The left engine is burning. They're still over England. Do the math. Royal Aircraft Establishment, Farnborough, February 1940. British test pilot Captain Eric Winkelbrown climbs into the captured E111H1. Aircraft A1 plus Da of Kampfgeschwader 26. Force landed at Firth of Forth after getting lost in fog. His mission: evaluate the design, document vulnerabilities, provide tactical recommendations to fighter command. He settles into the pilot's seat. Overhead, all the flight instruments' altitude, airspeed, engine gauges mount above his head on the cockpit roof. The positioning prevents them from blocking the pilot's downward view, but requires constant head movement to monitor. Brown notes this creates dangerous scan patterns during high workload phases like combat. The glass itself surprises him. From outside, the greenhouse nose appears as a smooth, organic bulb. Inside, it's a complex jigsaw of 67 individual panels held by aluminum framing. None of the glass is optically flat. Every surface has curvature. Brown later reports, in bright sunlight or overcast conditions, the glazing creates a mass of reflections and distortions that severely compromise visibility despite the greenhouse design. The paradox is fascinating. More glass equals worse visibility under certain conditions. The panel specifications recovered from the aircraft tell the technical story. Flat nose panels, 6 mm thick plexiglass. Upper curved sections, 8 mm thick plexiglass. Lower bombardier panels, 10 mm thick plexiglass. Framing, aluminum extrusion, 12 mm, 18 mm cross-section. Ballistic testing at RAF facilities provides sobering data. A standard .303 British round fired from 300 yards penetrates. All 6 mm panels with minimal deflection. 8 mm panels with 15-degree deflection maximum. 10 mm panels with significant deflection but still penetrates. The convergence zone of 8 Browning machine, guns all focused at 250 yards, creates a cone of fire, delivering 160 rounds per second. Fired into the He-111's glass nose at that range, the math becomes simple. Average panel shattering, 1.2 seconds of sustained fire. Probability of crew casualties, 87% based on frontal crew concentration. Probability of critical system damage, 94% hydraulic lines. Control cables, electrical systems all route through forward fuselage. Brown documents the crew positioning. Station 1 pilot, port side, 2.1 meters behind nose tip. Station 2 bombardier point aft. Station 3 navigator, starboard side, 1.8 meters behind nose tip. Station for flight engineer, when carried, behind pilot, 2.8 meters aft. All stations within a 2.8 meter cylinder. All enclosed entirely by glass. The structural analysis reveals additional problems. The aluminum framing creates hundreds of potential stress concentration points. Under combat damage, cracks propagate along the frames. One shattered panel typically compromises 3 to 5 adjacent panels through sympathetic vibration. German engineers attempted solutions. He-111 12 mm MGFF cannon, nose armor plate 8 mm, behind pilot only. He-111 additional fuel tanks in wing roots, extended range but no nose protection improvement. He-111-6, upgraded to 13 mm MG-131 in dorsal position, twin MG-81Z, in ventral still no frontal armor. Some sources indicate experimental thick glass panels were tested at Rechlin in late. 1,940. The weight penalty additional 340 kilograms proved unacceptable. Brown's final assessment: excellent bombing platform. Lethal vulnerability to frontal attack. Not survivable against determined fighter opposition. The British distribute his report. Widely. Feldwebel diary entry, recovered from Downey 111. September 1940. We can see them coming. That's the horror of it. Not like infantry where the bullet arrives before the sound. We watch the entire approach the fighter peeling off formation. The wings waggling as he steadies his aim, the orange flicker of gun ports lighting. All through this glass that was supposed to keep us safe. Yesterday Kraus died beside me, the bombardier. We were over Dover when the Spitfire came head-on. I watched the rounds punch through the front panels. You see them coming, little stars appearing in the glass, spreading like frost. Then they're through, and Kraus is jerking backwards, and there's blood on my flight suit, and he's trying to say something, but his jaw is. I can't write this. Dr. Heinrich Müller, Luftfahrtfahrtgekal Services, conducts interviews with returning bomber crews at Lille Nord Airfield in October 1940. The stress patterns are unprecedented. Fighter pilots experience terror in 3-second bursts. Bomber crews endure sustained fear for 2 to 3 hours per mission. But the He-111 crews report something different. Anticipatory dread focus specifically on frontal attacks. They describe watching fighters position themselves ahead of the formation, knowing the attack is coming, unable to maneuver effectively, feeling their word, naked behind the glass. Special Crews requested transfer to 17 or 88 units, despite the He-111's superior performance characteristics. Obergefreiter Paul Schmidt-Ventrelaufer Kent. In the belly position, we call it the Sterbebett, the deathbed. You lie there watching the ground, and you know you can't shoot forward. When the fighters come from ahead, you're useless, just waiting. The worst part. After the glass goes, the wind is so loud you can't hear the intercom. Can't hear if the pilot is ordering bailout. Can't hear if the engines are failing. You're just lying there in this hurricane of noise and cold, and you don't know if you should jump or stay. When I hit the ground parachute landing, I kissed the grass. Actual kissing. The British Home Guard found me like that, kissing the ground and crying. I didn't care. Anything was better than that glass coffin. Loinenton's Werner pilot, KG-55, letter to his wife censored excerpt. The new armament helps morale more than effectiveness. They gave us the 20mm cannon in the nose. Werner bombardier fires it at approaching fighters. The recoil shakes the whole aircraft. I doubt he hits anything, but it makes him feel less helpless. Yesterday's mission we lost for aircraft from our grup. All to frontal attacks. Or, in the first 5 minutes over England, the BBC claims we bombed a hospital in London. We were trying to hit the docks. The navigator was dead before we reached the target. The bombardier, half blind from glass shards in his eyes, just toggled the bombs when I told him to. Who knows what we hit? Kampfgeschwader 53 operational records show psychological casualties increasing through. September, 8 pilots removed from duty for nervous exhaustion, 11 crew members requesting medical evaluation. 3 cases of combat fatigue severe enough to require hospitalization. The glass, ironically, makes everything visible, including their own vulnerability, including each other's deaths, including the ground rising slowly. Messerschmitt Factory, Augsburg. October 1940. Engineers examine the captured Spitfire, flown accidentally to France by a confused RAF pilot. The 8-gun configuration fascinates them. More importantly, they analyze the ammunition load, 300 rounds per gun of .303-inch ball. Armor-piercing, an incendiary mix. The convergence pattern, traced from firing tests, shows devastating concentration at 250 yards. This is what's killing the Heinkels. Heinkel's response team proposes emergency modifications. The meeting minutes from October 18th record the discussion. Proposal 1. Install 30mm armor glass panels in critical nose sections. Status. Rejected. No production capacity. Weight penalty 3. 180 kilograms reduces operational range by 220 kilometers. Proposal 2. ADD 15mm steel plate behind forward crew positions. Status. Partial implementation. Plate behind pilot only. Additional 145 kilograms. Weight. Reduces top speed by 15 kilometers per hour. Proposal 3. Redesign nose to reduce glazed area. Increase metal structure. Status: rejected. Requires new production tooling. Minimum 14-month development timeline. Current production cannot be interrupted, but the RAF is also adapting. Fighter Command's Tactical Memorandum No. 8, issued September 20th, 1940, codifies the lessons. Attacks on He-111 bombers should prioritize head-on or frontal quarter approach when tactical situation permits. The extensive nose glazing presents minimal resistance to .303 ball ammunition. Concentration of fire on the forward fuselage section typically results in immediate crew casualties: pilot, navigator, bombardier. Control system damage: cables route through forward compartment. Engine vulnerability: frontal aspect less protected than beam. Recommended attack profile: approach from 10 degrees above horizon, 2,000 yards range. Open fire at 400 yards. Break contact at 100 yards or less. Single pass. High speed. The Germans try electronic countermeasures. Some He-111s receive the FUG-25A Ursuling IFF system transponders that identify them to friendly fighters. Doesn't help. The Spitfires don't care about identification. They can see the distinctive greenhouse nose from 3 miles away. Tactical formation changes yield limited results. The defensive box bombers in tight Vic formations with overlapping fields of fireworks against beam and stern attacks, but remains vulnerable frontally. Kampfgeschwader 1 experiments with head-on-hedgehog formations, but these prove impossible to maintain during bombing runs. Night operations become the solution. By November 1940, 70% of E-111 missions occur after dark. The glass nose, liability in daylight, becomes an asset for nocturnal navigation. Crews use the Knickerbein radio beam system, with the bombardier tracking signals through the forward glass observatory. RAF night fighter response is initially ineffective. Bristol Beaufighters and Balton-Paul Defiance lack effective radar until 1941. The He-111s bomb with near impunity during the London Blitz. But the damage is done. Production priorities shift. Junkers RU-88 orders increase its conventional cockpit and higher speed, make it more survivable. By January 1941, He-111 production drops to 60 aircraft monthly. The RU-88 receives 140 monthly slots. Several captured He-111s receive modifications at RAF Farnborough, reinforced nose sections using salvaged British bomber armor glass. The tests show 60% improvement in ballistic resistance. But the modifications never reach Luftwaffe production lines. Why? Because by mid-1941, the He-111 is already obsolete. The glass nose, once revolutionary, now marks it as a relic. Visible from miles away, a target, not a weapon. June 21st, 1944, Poltava Airfield, Ukraine. 100 He-111s approach in the darkness, not to bomb, but to deliver. They've adapted. The greenhouse nose now houses navigational equipment for pathfinding night raids. But tonight represents the aircraft's final significant combat success. American B-17s and P-51s rest on the Ukrainian airfield after a shuttle raid on Berlin. The Heinkels arrive at 1 o'clock hours and destroy 4 to 3 B-17s and 15 P-51s on the ground. Not with precision bombing through the glass nose, in daylight. With crude area bombing in darkness. The ultimate irony. The design feature that made them vulnerable in 1940 is now irrelevant because they only fly at night. The visibility advantage doesn't matter when you can't see. The concentrated crew positions don't matter when night fighters lack effective intercept capability. By war's end, only 9 He-111s remain operational with frontline Luftwaffe units. The legacy extends beyond Germany. Spain continues operating CASA-2, 111 South license-built Heinkels until 1973, 33 years after the Battle of Britain. The final missions are transport and training flights. The glass nose is long since reinforced with metal panels. The vulnerability corrected 3 decades too late. Modern analysis reveals the core failure. Heinkel prioritized visibility over survivability in an era when fighter tactics were evolving faster than bomber doctrine. The same greenhouse that seemed revolutionary in 1938 became obsolete by 1940 when RAF Fighter Command adopted aggressive frontal attack tactics. The numbers tell the story. Total He-111 production, approximately 7,300 aircraft. Battle of Britain losses July-October 1940, 242, confirmed destroyed. 60% attributed to frontal fighter attacks. Average crew survival rate from frontal attacks, 13%. British test pilot Eric Brown's assessment proved prophetic. The mass of glass created optical distortions in sunny and cloudy conditions alike to weather states that encompass nearly all combat operations. The visibility advantage existed only in perfect conditions, which combat rarely provided. The He-111's descendants learned the lesson. Post-war, bomber designs from the B-47 to the Tu-16 feature minimal glazing, pressurized crew compartments, and armored cockpits. The panoramic nose, observatory design died with the He-111. Some engineering students still study the aircraft. As a cautionary example, elegant solutions can create catastrophic vulnerabilities. The glass nose solved the visibility problem brilliantly while creating a survivability crisis. Surviving crewmen interviewed decades later remember most clearly what they could see. Every detail of the approaching fighters, every panel of glass shattering inward, every face of the crewman dying beside them. The design gave them perfect visibility to watch their own destruction. In aviation museums, from Hendon to Dayton, Ohio, restored He-111s sit behind velvet ropes. Visitors photographed the distinctive glass nose. Tour guides explain the revolutionary design. Children press their faces against the plexiglass panels, imagining the view from 20,000 feet. Most never learn what that view cost, or who paid it, or why.